why trying hard makes you fail. Lao Tzu explains there's a strange paradox at the heart of human life that no one tells you about. It's invisible, but it shapes almost everything we do. It shows up in our goals, our ambitions, even our moments of despair. And it's this: the harder you try, the more you push, the more you force, the less likely you are to reach what you truly want. Success becomes elusive, peace becomes impossible, but fulfillment slips through your fingers like water. You try harder and harder, and yet you feel further and further from the life you imagined. And if you've ever wondered why that happens, why so much effort leads to so little satisfaction, you're not alone. 2,000 years ago, a quiet philosopher in ancient China named Lao Tzu saw the same thing happening in his world. And he left us a message buried inside the Tao Te Ching: stop trying so hard. But wait, how can that be right? Isn't trying hard the whole point? Isn't that what we're taught from the beginning? That if you just work harder, grind more, hustle longer, you'll eventually win. That if you force yourself to keep going, even when it hurts, even when you're broken, you'll finally arrive somewhere better? That's the message of modern culture. But Lao Tzu, with terrifying clarity, tells us something else, something most of us don't want to hear. The more you try to control life, the more life controls you.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
To understand this paradox, we have to understand the nature of the Tao. The Tao is not a god, not a belief system, not a rule book. It's the underlying flow of reality itself, the way things move when they are left alone. Rivers flow effortlessly to the sea. Trees grow without instruction. The stars align with no ambition. Nature doesn't force, and yet everything gets done. It is the ultimate counterintuitive truth. Non-action accomplishes more than action. Not because you do nothing, but because you stop resisting the natural direction of things. Think about how often we resist. We resist failure. We resist uncertainty. We resist change. We try to bend life to our will, to dominate the unknown, to conquer time. But Lao Tzu says, by trying to control the world, I only make it worse. And if you're honest, you felt this too, haven't you? The job interview you rehearsed too much for and stumbled through. The relationship you tried to fix by clinging tighter, only to watch it fall apart. The dream you chased so obsessively that it stopped being a dream and became a nightmare. What if the effort itself was the problem? This isn't about being lazy. Lao Tzu isn't saying don't care. He's saying care differently. Care in a way that doesn't attach your identity to outcomes. Act, but don't strive. Move, but don't force. Flow, but don't grasp. And that requires something most people are afraid of: letting go of control. Because control makes us feel safe. It gives us the illusion that we're doing something. But the truth is, control is a prison disguised as a strategy. The more you try to hold on to life, the more brittle it becomes. You can't squeeze a river into stillness. You can only float. So what does that look like in real life? It looks like trusting your preparation instead of obsessing over the result. It looks like showing up to the interview and being fully present instead of mentally chasing acceptance. It looks like loving someone deeply without needing them to complete you. It looks like doing the work because the process matters, not because you're terrified of what happens if you don't succeed. Lao Tzu's wisdom isn't passive, it's precise. He's telling us you are not separate from the flow of life. Stop acting like you're at war with it. And here's where it gets even deeper. The moment you let go of trying to win, you become free to actually live. You stop judging every moment by its usefulness. You stop measuring your worth by your productivity. You start to notice the tiny details, the wind in the trees, the quiet voice inside you, the way things unfold when you don't interfere. And ironically, that's when life finally starts working. People begin to trust you more. Opportunities flow more naturally. You stop blocking your own path with desperate effort. In the words of the Tao, he who stands on tiptoe is not steady. He who rushes ahead does not go far. So let me ask you something that might shake your view of success. What if your struggle is not a sign that you're failing, but a sign that you're fighting the flow? What if the very energy you're using to try harder is exactly what's pulling you further away from what you want? And what would happen if, just for a moment, you let go not out of defeat, but out of wisdom? Lao Tzu isn't telling you to give up. He's telling you to wake up, to stop chasing life like it owes you something, and instead to start listening for what life is already offering if you'd only stop shouting long enough to hear it. The art of letting go, how non-striving unlocks true power. Let's take a moment and go deeper beyond the surface of effort, beyond the noise of ambition. Because if the first lesson is that trying too hard disconnects us from the natural rhythm of life, then the second is far more subtle and far more transformative. When you stop striving, you don't become passive, you become powerful. That's the paradox Lao Tzu teaches us. True power isn't found in domination, in pushing, in forcing. It's found in alignment, in moving with the current, not against it. And to do that, you have to practice the most radical act our culture has forgotten, letting go. But letting go is terrifying, isn't it? We're taught from the beginning that control equals safety, that planning equals progress, that gripping tightly means we care. We're told to hold on to our goals, our timelines, our images of success, and never let go. But Lao Tzu flips that completely. He says, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. That's not just poetic, it's revolutionary. Because it means that your potential isn't something you reach by effort alone. It's something you allow by release. It's something that emerges when you stop clinging to who you think you're supposed to be. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing less of what doesn't work. It means releasing the need to control things that were never yours to control in the first place, other people's opinions, external outcomes, the future. It means accepting that uncertainty isn't the enemy. It's the space where life breathes. And the more you try to force clarity, the more you strangle possibility. Lao Tzu teaches that water is the most powerful force, not because it's strong in the conventional sense, but because it's adaptable. It flows around obstacles. It yields, but never breaks. And in doing so, it wears down mountains. Think about that. Water doesn't panic. It doesn't resist. It doesn't doubt. It just flows. And in flowing, it transforms everything it touches. That's what non-striving looks like in action. It's not lazy. It's not indifferent. It's wise. It moves with purpose, but without tension. It trusts the process because it knows the process is bigger than the self. And that trust is where real power begins. Because the moment you stop trying to be powerful, you become powerful. not in an egoic way, but in a grounded, unshakable inner way. The problem is, most of us are addicted to effort. Not because we love discipline, but because we're afraid. We fear failure. We fear being overlooked. We fear being ordinary. And so we overcompensate. We hustle harder. We chase validation. We grind our souls into dust, trying to prove we're enough. But Lao Tzu whispers a different message. You already are enough when you stop trying to be more than you are. The oak tree never forces itself to grow. It simply stands in the sun, drinks from the rain, and trusts the earth to do what it's always done. So how do we begin to let go in real life? We start small. We notice where we're gripping too tightly, where we're trying to force love, or force success, or force clarity. We breathe into those spaces. We ask, what would happen if I trusted this moment instead of trying to control it? And we act from that space, not from fear, but from presence. We stop chasing outcomes and start showing up fully to the process. We stop needing to win every interaction and start listening more deeply. We stop needing to be seen as successful and start aligning with what actually feels true. And here's the strange, magical part. Once you begin to let go, life begins to respond. People trust you more. You become magnetic not because you're trying to be, but because you're not trying. You radiate calm. You move fluidly. You stop blocking your own energy. And in that flow, in that surrender, you discover a kind of strength that can't be faked. A strength that comes from being rooted in something deeper than ego, something timeless. So let me ask you something personal and uncomfortable. What are you still trying to force in your life right now? And what would happen if you stopped? Not because you've given up, but because you finally trust that the river knows where it's going. What if true power isn't about gripping tighter, but loosening your hold and allowing the current to carry you somewhere better than your plans ever imagined? Because maybe, just maybe, the version of you that's trying so hard to succeed is the very thing standing in the way of who you're meant to become. The trap of control. Why forcing life breaks at control is seductive. It promises clarity, predictability, mastery. It whispers that if you just plan enough, work enough, dominate enough, life will unfold exactly as you want it to. And for a while, that illusion works. You set goals, you make lists, you push yourself harder and you see results. But what happens when life doesn't cooperate? When people don't act the way you expect? When effort doesn't produce the reward? That's when the illusion begins to fracture. That's when you realize that control, for all its shine, is nothing but a beautifully decorated trap. Lao Tzu saw this long before modern psychology caught up. The more you try to control life, the more life resists you. Control isn't the opposite of chaos, it creates chaos. Because when you try to force life into a fixed shape, you're not working with reality, you're working against it. And anything built against the grain of nature eventually collapses. You might achieve short-term success, but it comes at a cost: chronic stress, internal tension, broken relationships, and a deep, gnawing sense that something is always just slightly off. That's what happens when you're living from the mind's agenda instead of the soul's rhythm. You become a manager of outcomes, not a participant in life. The Tao Te Ching tells us the world is sacred. It cannot be improved. If you try to change it, you will ruin it. This doesn't mean we shouldn't act. It means our actions should arise from alignment, not obsession. When we force things to happen, relationships, careers, even healing, what we're really doing is trying to escape the discomfort of uncertainty. We're trying to write the ending before the story has even unfolded. And in doing so, we miss the wisdom that only uncertainty can offer. Control is a refusal to listen. It's a refusal to trust. Think about how this plays out in everyday life. You try to control how someone sees you, so you say what they want to hear instead of what's true. You try to control your future, so you overwork yourself into exhaustion, thinking burnout is the price of success. You try to control your emotions, so you repress them, and they find darker ways to surface. You try to control your image, your timeline, your path. But in the end, the more tightly you grip the steering wheel, the more life veers off course. Why? Because life isn't a machine, it's a mystery. And mysteries can't be controlled, only lived. Letting go of control doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming attuned. It means acting from awareness instead of anxiety. It means listening to what life is asking from you in this moment, not what your ego is demanding. It means recognizing that your plans are guesses and reality is the teacher. Lao Tzu calls this Wu Wei effortless action. It's not inaction, it's action that flows from deep alignment. It's doing the right thing at the right time, not because you forced it, but because you felt it. And that kind of action is infinitely more effective than anything born from panic. Here's the paradox. When you stop trying to control life, you gain influence, not over outcomes, but over your presence, over your energy, over how you show up. And that's where the real power is. People don't trust controllers. They trust those who are grounded, open, calm. Life, too, responds more generously to those who are in tune with it, not at war with it. When you stop manipulating the river begins to carry you. So I'll ask you again, but on a deeper level, where in your life are you still forcing something to happen? Where are you trying to bend life to your will? And what would it feel like to let go, not in defeat, but in trust? What if surrender isn't weakness, but the most courageous action of all? Because here's the truth. The hands that are always trying to fix reality never have the space to receive its gifts. And sometimes, the best way to change your life is to stop trying to change it at all. Becoming the river, how surrender sets you free at the heart of Lao Tzu's wisdom is one image that appears again and again, the river. Not just as a metaphor, but as a living, breathing example of the Tao in motion. The river doesn't ask where it's going. It doesn't resist the rocks in its path. It doesn't demand that the landscape rearrange itself. It simply flows, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes narrow, sometimes wide, but always it moves forward with grace, not because it fights, but because it surrenders. And in that surrender lies a kind of freedom that we, in our constant striving, rarely taste. When we try to force life to make sense, to give us guarantees, to obey our timelines, we become rigid. We become like stone. We try to control things that cannot be controlled, how others see us, when we succeed, whether we get what we think we deserve. But the river doesn't concern itself with deserving. It just is. And that's the secret. Surrender isn't about giving up. It's about becoming who you already are without the armor, without the pressure, without the illusion of control. It's about embracing life as it comes, knowing that every twist in the river has meaning, even if it doesn't make sense yet. The reason surrender feels so hard is because it threatens the ego. The ego wants to be in charge. It wants to define the path, to predict the outcome, to earn its worth. But the deeper part of you, the part that's connected to the Tao, knows better. It knows that peace doesn't come from predicting the future. It comes from trusting it, and trust isn't passive. It's a choice, a radical, repeated, daily choice to let go of the illusion that you're supposed to have it all figured out. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to become someone else to be valuable. That's the lie we've been sold by a world addicted to noise, speed, and comparison. But the Tao whispers something else. You are already enough, exactly as you are, when you are in harmony with the flow of life. The river doesn't try to shine. It simply reflects the light that's already there. So what does it actually mean to become the river? It means you stop pushing against what is. You stop labeling this moment as wrong, as insufficient, as not enough. You meet it fully. You trust that even if you don't understand what's happening, it belongs. You show up not with a plan to force life into submission, but with an openness to respond to what life is offering. And when you do this, something beautiful happens. You stop drowning in your own resistance. You start flowing,